I'm originally from Long Island, from Great Neck, and I grew up across from the Long Island Sound. And I was, from a very young age, didn't understand why people couldn't swim in the water. And an environmental educator, when I was in fourth grade, came in with a mini aquifer, a display of an aquifer, which is how water is filtrated in Long Island, which was formed by a glacier. And he showed how if you put dirty water through this mini aquifer, how the water gets cleaned, but if you put like printer's ink in and that plume, then all the water that went through also got dirty, and it was like a light bulb went off in my head. And after that, I studied marine biology in CW Post. I also studied music, and that was my introduction to Japanese culture. My music teacher, Alan Wan, Japanese American, taught me about breathing, taught me about meditation, and that's kind of how I got interested in Japan. At UC Berkeley, I studied Buddhism, and I also studied ecosystemology, which is the study of ecosystems, and I studied Japanese as well. In 2000, I first moved to Japan. I lived in the Japanese Alps, where the Olympics were in '98, and I worked on the JET program, which I don't know if any of you have heard. It's the Japan Exchange and Teaching Program. There are about 70,000 alumni across 45 different countries. It's an example of soft power in Japan, but it's also an example of how Japan tried to internationalize at the grassroots level. Afterwards, I studied Japanese in Yokohama. I then went on to earn a master's in environmental and information studies in Japan. And then I went on to do surveys for US forces, for the US military, for example, endangered species surveys. I then moved into a think tank. I contributed to various central government initiatives. In 2011, I came back to New York. I worked at a software startup on the theme of the topic of communication, and I also worked in distributed ledger technology. I won't go into too much detail, but in April 2020, I was first introduced to Kumano because a letter came from my father-in-law from Kumano that a piece of property was in disrepair. And I'd been married probably 12, 13 years at the time, and I didn't know he had property in Kumano. And he said, "Don't worry about it, I'm just going to throw it away. Don't worry about it." But I was immediately interested, so I traveled down there in June, and I started to have activities around it. I had been affiliated with one of the government of Japan's innovation groups through the Ministry of Internal Affairs and Communication called Innovation. And I established it as a innovation network hub in late 2020, and then I established my company in 2021. I also did some interesting training with someone who had become another director in the company called Zen School, which uses Eastern modalities in order to encourage creativity and innovation. So I also wanted to introduce my guests here today briefly. I'm supported by two friends. First, Denise Penizotto. If you could just introduce yourself, I'll go through the slides.
Hello, everybody. My name is Denise Penizotto. I'm a visual artist. I work in oil, gouache, clay, and wire, and I'm also a professor of religion and the arts at Hunter College. My work right now is all about regeneration. This is called When Odin Released the Ravens. It's really all about regeneration and the cycle of life. A lot of my work is metaphorical. This is actually quite a large piece, as you can see, 84 inches by 72 inches, and I try to consider regeneration throughout my work.
I asked Denise to include this one with the raven because the myth of Kumano actually is that the archipelago of Japan was conquered by the first emperor, Tenmu, who followed a three-legged raven through Yamato, which is a bordering region of Kumano, to eventually unify the entire island of Japan, or the islands of Japan. I'm also joined by Yasuo Nomura, a good friend and artist. Nomura-san?
Hello, my name is Yasuo Nomura. I'm originally from Japan. I've been living in New York for almost 4.5 years. I'm also a visual artist. That Recently, I have a new activity in space. So, I am doing a space art project. Deeply, my body of concept is aims to a higher dimensional space. Recently, I made a really huge experimental art installation. And next to my big dream, that we will be launch an art satellite into space. And this year, we got a part of the phase of this space art dream. My small art piece was delivered to the International Space Station this March. And there is a very unique point that the plate was attached to the outside of the station. Actually, it is exposed to space directly. And after a few months, this plate will be returned to Earth. It is the very first art piece that experienced outside of space. At the same time, I'm expanding it much more as a conceptual art connecting space and ground. Its name is Pion and Log Love Tour. Pion symbolizes higher dimensional geometry and message to our next decade. Because we human beings really step into the two space age era. This concept is very sympathetic to Adam's project. So far, we are discussing collaborating idea a lot. Yeah, thank you for taking this great opportunity, Adam. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Yasuo. So the outcomes for today is I hope that you'll learn a little bit about Kumano, and you'll also learn about why the wood of Kumano, cypress and cedar, is unique. The products that I brought today are from a sawmill that my friend, it's a third generation timber mill in Kumano, he gave me to bring today. And you'll learn why it's kind of considered some of the finest wood in Japan, and maybe you'll be interested in learning more about it. I left my business cards on the desk. So I wanted to just tell you a little bit about also about Kumano Shindo. It means Kumano New Path, which is juxtaposed by Kumano Old Path, which is one of two UNESCO World Heritage Sites, which is a pilgrimage route. The other one is in Europe. And I built a community school, or I'm building a community school located along this UNESCO World Heritage Site called the Sacred Sites and Pilgrimage Routes of the Key Mountain Range. This is also Kumano. This is recognized about 1,300 wet rice paddies, one of the largest in Japan. This is another beautiful area. It's not just mountains, it's also ocean. This is Atashika Beach. The rivers flow from the mountains into the water, so the water is very soft. It's very beautiful there. So Kumano Shindo means Kumano New Path, and kind of the raison d'etre of what we wanted to do is highlight new environmental technologies, new collaborations between schools, tourists, use environmental technologies. And the reason I found out that my father-in-law had property there is that my great-grandfather-in-law was the first teacher in an all-girls high school in the area in 1920. And he built the house that I'll show you today that I'm renovating with students from Japan. And learning this history has kind of become part of the work that I do in the community. So why is the wood of Japan so interesting? It's actually called the land of trees, Kinokuni. You may have heard maybe near Bryant Park there's Kinokuniya. That's the same characters for Kinokuni. It's Kinokuniya. And it's located here in this peninsula south of Tokyo. Actually, this area, Kushimoto City, is the southernmost city in Honshu, the main island of Japan. And these are the routes to go to the sacred mountains that are located in Wakayama Prefecture, but historically the area was called Ki. And the area that goes through Kumano City, which is on the Mie Prefecture side, is used by the Emperor of Japan when he travels from Ise, from the Grand Shrine to these holy mountains. So this is very detailed. It's basically the origin was a country where the god of trees dwell. It's in the original Chronicles of Japan that goes back to, I think, the 700s. It's mentioned kind of how it was established through the gods. It's also mentioned in the Kojiki, which actually predates the Nihon Shiki. And this mentions again how Emperor Jinmu, sorry I said his name wrong previously, passed through this area of Ki Kumano on his way to Yamato and conquering Japan. So this is the property. When I first saw it, it had been abandoned for about 25 years. I visited with a friend, and after a few visits, we transformed it, just a few days of work, we transformed it from this into this. And my graduate studies are in the restoration of traditional agricultural landscape in Japan, so it was a good fit. I was just happy to be able to work on this land. This is also the view in June 2020, and this is the roof that we put up in May of this year. These are the students from Kindai University in Osaka, and this professor is in Tada. Professor Tada is an architect in Kyoto. He has his offices there, and he recently earned his PhD in sort of the sacred sites of Kumano and restoration of those sites. So he's helped take over this project. We removed, God, I forget how many thousands of roof tiles, and it was a very large job. Underneath the roof tiles, these are boards, but underneath the roof tiles was actually cedar strips. So the cedar tree, the bark is stripped, and it was laid on the roof. This isn't a thatch roof design, but often traditional kawara, tile roof design has that feature. So some of the other things we do in addition to renovating this house is also most of our revenue is through creating online courses about climate change. So our recent work is creating a course for a Japanese national university on the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change's AR6, including several courses on built space. So we've spoken with people that are in your field. And then I wanted to speak a little bit about Nojimoku, who provided this wonderful wood here today. So Nojimoku has been our kind of champion. We've done several projects with him. His dream is actually to come to New York, so maybe one day he'll be able to meet all of you here. And I actually wanted to speak a little bit about Nojimoku, what it's like in Japan in a highly depopulating area with 15,000 people. 50 years ago, it had 60,000 people. That's super aging, what it's like for him, a former rock band musician, to take over his family's sawmill and try to create value. And a lot of that value that he's tried to create is working with designers and architects to create new product lines that don't exist on the market. So I'm just going to switch presentations. So this is a little bit about what Nojimoku does. So what is forestry? Forestry is, of course, the forest owners. It's the foresters. Does anyone here have experience with forestry or timber mills? Okay. Do you use timber or wood products in your work and design? Yeah. Where do you guys source it from?
Like, where does Madeira source? Like,
okay.
Yeah.
Canada.
Okay. Great.
We don't specify where things come from much, just the vendors that.
Got it. I think a slide went forward, but there's the marketplace. There's the timber mill. This is my friend's timber mill. There's pre-cut factories. I think you can see some of the Japanese joint work here. Carpentry and construction. Of course, architecture and design wasn't included in this. And there are words in Japanese, at least, for the people who run different things, like a lumberjack is someone who fells the trees, a carpenter builds the houses. But there wasn't a really kind of a name for someone who actually manufactured the logs and beams in Japan. So my friend created a game and brought that game to hundreds of schools and businesses and universities in Japan to teach people about what the role of a timber mill is in Japan. And I won't go into too many of the details. It's like really, really detailed. But the game is called Seizai game because in Japan a timber mill does it Seizaisho. And basically, like the goal is to increase the value of a certain material, the A material, and then also to add value to trees through the creation of products. So you play the timber mill CEO, that's the game. And you pull these different tree cards, so you'll pick an untouched tree card, you'll put the wood cutting card on top of it, you'll start to create product, you'll sell the product. And then there are different processes, like after you plant, there's cutting and thinning, there's foresting activities, pruning activities that are all part of the game. And they work with students and they show them what it's like to actually fell the trees as part of their work. These are called seri in Japan, this actual raw form of lumber. And they learn intimately when they go to if they were to go to the yard, how that sales process takes place. And basically you saw how they sort of give prices. And a lot of the prices and why this Kumano wood is so fine is because there are few knots in the wood. So it's completely solid wood, but the way that they raise the wood from a very young age is they have a management technique where they take off the branches, it's called eraharai, and as a result you get wood without any knots in it. And that's a unique technique to this area of Japan in particular. So it's not the volume isn't what they seek, but it's actually this high quality without these knots in it. And you can see these branches, if they grow up and then the tree is taken down, these will form the knots in the wood. And you prevent that by doing these management activities. And then there's a judging process based on looking at the different parts of the wood. And it's almost like the tuna market where there's these different names, like there's the belly and the back, there's like the stomach, and I'll show a little bit about that. And that they've developed like really fine techniques to raise and then judge this high quality wood. And this also shows what they're learning about where the different products come from within this is a diameter cross section. So the beams are coming from the middle, the flooring would be coming from the middle or the sides, and these people are learning how do they get the most added value out of timber. Is it better to get a beam? What's the price of the beam, etc. And then they understand the application of it with the horizontal beams, the hari, the vertical beams, the hashira, floor, and also stairs. And they learn about different assigning value, and it's quite complex, and I won't go into all the details. This is what I had mentioned earlier about the different parts of the tree. The red meat here, the stomach, the core, the back, and the white fat. So it's very similar almost to like the tuna marketplace model. These are what the students are learning. So they're learning details about primary industry from people that manage primary industry in Japan and have great pride in their work. This is a little bit about different Japanese architectural components like the kamui and the shiki. I don't need to go into much detail, but you'll see that the use of the grain later is very integral to how the Japanese rooms are created. What's considered to be a beautiful grain in the kamui. And this is their take on it. Maybe you guys can say if it's correct or not. But they said, what's the difference between the use of wood in Japanese style versus overseas, being here and Europe? Is both examples reflect countries with wood cultures, but the overseas design uses painting and shape processing, while the Japanese style rooms are designed to be straight and show the grain of the wood. The beauty of the wood grain created by Japanese craftsmen reflects a wisdom that compensates for the inherent shortcomings of the wood, born of knowledge and experience. Does this resonate with you with how wood is used in your projects? Okay. This talks a little bit about the different areas in Japan and the largest production. In Japan, the largest production is happening in Tohoku, where the earthquake happened in 2011, in Kyushu, the southwestern island, and Hokkaido, the northeastern island, with very little actually taking place, the least out of all these regions taking place in this Kinki region. What I'll review briefly today is how do they survive amid those challenges. This is a breakdown of different ways that the wood is, from wood for construction to pressed board to wood chips and biomass materials in blue, wood chipping in yellow, pressed board in orange, and other pressed board and chip activities in pink. And this is an example of how they rank the wood. And you'll see actually that this is general wood. So with these imperfections or this darker area of the core extending out to the rings. And this is Kumano wood, and you'll see that this A rank wood, which a lot of this is A rank wood that I brought here today, has less of this dark area in the middle. So you're finding more of that, I think, that white fatty part that they talked about. These areas are also in the Kii Peninsula. Yoshino is famous for cherry trees. So the cherry trees are all the same trees, like the one in DC. There are the Yoshino trees, and Owase is also near Kumano. Japan has one of the highest percentage of forest coverage in the world, and also has a high percentage of artificially planted forests or human-designed forests. So this is Japan here, and this light green is human-managed forests. But actually, their wood self-sufficiency, and this is due to pricing matters, especially from China and other areas. This orange part shows that their total forest volume and their total wood self-sufficiency. So in the United States, which is here, the total forest area is here and the self-sufficiency is here. So this is going to be, they're taking in, I guess, I don't know if this is the total volume of wood used, I apologize, but basically they use very little of their own wood in Japan. This is a little bit about the history of forestry in Japan. The pressures from different industries like biomass, laminated wood, CLT, large stadium construction. And I'll just actually go to the area about their collaboration with architects. So this shows the decrease of 56% in small scale lumber mills over the past 15 years, but an increase in domestic lumber volume. So after the wood shock in the COVID era, the price of wood also went down. So how do they survive? It's their family business. And they survive through their strengths. One is location, this area with these management practices that lead to a very high quality wood. Also the history of the area. Japan's oldest shrine is located in this area. Focus on materials. So the high quality Yoshino cedar, Owase cypress, and Tenryu cedar that I showed and that's here today. So actually the way that they've distinguished themselves or differentiated themselves is through their quality. That is not achieved in any other area of Japan or perhaps any other area in the world. And through collaborating with architects to create these unique products. So one of the products that I brought today is called Hameita. It's a small width plank. This has a color component to it, but this is created with the look towards what might be appealing in a Western market, but using Japanese wood products. So by using this sort of production technique from this solid piece of wood, they create this texture here. And they work with these architects, in this case, Ide Satoshi Design, in order to create these products. Their sales team is led by women, and that's helped them work with designers and other people that would be interested in their work. This is a cedar outer wall that uses their wood. The design firm is Onishimaki and Hyundai Yuki. I can share the materials with links if you're interested in looking at the projects. This is Yu Nishizawa. This uses a cypress outer. There's some cypress materials here today. This is a Kengo Kuma's work in Yokohama International School, which uses their products as well. So they differentiate by creating unique products with a high quality wood that's not found anywhere else in the world. And if you're interested in looking at other examples of how their wood can be used in design, you can go to this link, warmthworks.nojimoku.co.jp. Even though it's in Japanese, if you have any questions, I'm happy to send it in English. But these are all examples of interior and exteriors that are used with their wood products. So warmthworks.nojimoku.co.jp. This is another architect they work with. So all of their original products are created in collaboration with architects. This is Toshihito Yokuchi, and this is the House in the Wood Roku. And they haven't had any of these with overseas architects to date, but they have online like drinking parties with architects to discuss the challenges of architects and designers and talk about ways that they can create new products together. So they create this like kind of izakaya, like a Japanese bar, and then they have you and you talk about your lives. And if you're interested, I'd be happy to interpret. They do other things like these campaigns where for like $20, they'll give you as much wood as you want. You can use it for interesting projects. And then just in review, the high quality, the original line of products, and working closely with architects is kind of what their strengths are and why I came here today. One of the reasons why I came here today. So what you just saw before was inspired by this is a Western design, but how can you achieve this with a single piece of wood? And that was a hameita, which I just showed. And that's how this roof was constructed here. Ceiling, my apologies. And I think that's it for this. Do you have any questions before I just continue with a few closing out slides?
It's really interesting.
It is? I wasn't sure.
Yeah,
I haven't been living in New York for like 5 years now, and I haven't come back that much. So it's interesting to meet with everyone here today and to kind of get your feedback.
Are they currently importing into the U.S. or not yet?
So they're interested in doing it. So if there's a project, even like a small pilot, the prices of surface shipping have gone down since like when it was really expensive. So I'd be happy to coordinate the import, and we have all the regulations as far as like the processing that needs to be done in order to bring wood into the United States. I brought other wood products into the States for a pilot project we did with a school in Westchester, but that was a biochar product. That was a product that they make to burn, and we turned it into biochar, and then we planted trees with high school students. They created they have all this leftover wood, and instead of throwing it out, they created something to teach children how to safely make fires called hiasobi, which means play with fire. And then they crowdfunded it and sold that. So if I can just speak for a few more minutes, so for people that are interested, I'll just tell them a little bit more about what I do. So one of the ways that Nojimoku engages with the local community is through this creation of the Kumano Summit. In a highly depopulating area, how do you create innovation and interest and buzz? And that's with universities. All these universities' designs and architectural programs are involved in now the 7th year this year of this Kumano Summit, where they bring in young architects and designers, and they say, how can we apply your knowledge towards product design, towards project design, etc. So these are students from Kindai University, and this is my project in Kumano, the renovation of a 100-year-old farmhouse. This was taken last week, where we used, where the students learn how to basically, this is not wood, this is metal. The west and north faces will be used metal sheeting, and then the southern and eastern faces will be wood siding, original Kumano wood siding. But these are the students learning from the very beginning of demolition of the roof through the final project completion. They're all working on the project together. So this will be the center of our environmental education programming. And Denise talked a little bit about regeneration, but regeneration has been kind of a central theme. This was during Zen school, which we conducted in virtual reality. So we've been doing a lot of work, well, my partners have in virtual reality. And this was kind of a moment where I had like an epiphany, and supposedly this like light came out of my head. And just kind of the Zen school and the Zen process the innovation process is well encapsulated in the 10 ox pictures. Have you heard of the 10 ox pictures? Okay. So this is basically a picture of like taming the ox and then finding out that basically the passion, being the ox, was really inside of you and not outside of you. So a process of regeneration or discovery through meditative or relaxation as opposed to kind of a doing, which is very consistent with the Zen, which comes from Chinese Chan, which incorporated a lot of the Taoist thinking of do nothingness or non-activity. And in regeneration, which is kind of central to our paradigm, moving from an extractive to sustainability and beyond sustainability. So if you look at how CO2 emissions are, even though the rate of increase has decreased, the rate is still increasing. So if we sustain our current society, it's not sustainable. So how do we use the natural regenerative capacity of the earth through biomimicry and other land management techniques in order to improve our quality of life? This is just an organizational overview of our mission to create a regenerative society and our values, which include working with the people of Ki in a very deep matter. So like working with, the older citizens, people in their 60s, 70s, and 80s, doing interview reports, many of the things that you do when you're on site and are maybe doing a new construction in an area where there's been old construction. What are the memories that the people have of that site? How can we incorporate some of those memories into the new site? For example, taking off tile roofs and grinding them and lining the sidewalks with them so they have a remembrance of their previous home. Most of our line is through our restoration of Satoyama, which is the traditional agricultural landscape of Japan, environmental education, including IPCC AR6, transforming today's energy sector and a low carbon future. If you're interested, my partner in Portland has done a lot of work with the Forest Service of Oregon on mass timber, so large mass timber products in Oregon. We also do early childhood education for local children in themes including school gardening curriculum, microclimates, supporting beneficial insects, ecosystem symbiosis interactions, and mindfulness for children. This is our board. Miki-san is the creator of Zen School and also runs the largest mindfulness and Zen conference in Japan, which will happen in September. It's also online. Carolina is a master of natural resource management. She was in Portugal, and she spent 4 months on the land last year creating a master plan. Satoka has a lot of background in management. She's a former director, and I'm mostly working with Dan on the curriculum. And Yuki Watanabe has a background in hotel management as well as consulting at Deloitte Tomatsu. Architects have been involved very early with our project. The name Kumano Shindo or Kumano New Road was created by an architect who wasn't involved in the design of the project, saw the potential for this very long piece of land, which is less than probably a hectare in total size, but is very, very long. So it looks like a road, and it's juxtaposed by the World Heritage Site Kumano Old Road. So how can you create a new road juxtaposed by that, and what design elements do you use? The home and the tea garden, living space, flower gardens. We'd like to expand into solar, as well as chickens and educational gardens. So this is the master plan for the land. We also own forest land as well as strands of bamboo, and you're always welcome to visit and chill and have fun. This is the original design. And this is the new design, including a loft space. And we put on the new roof, we put on some of the siding. So that's like pretty much it. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer. And I just wanted to thank everyone for their time today. Do you guys have any questions? Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for having me. And please, if you have any questions, I put my cards on the table. I'll leave those samples for you as well, so you can keep those. And just kind of an overview of the samples. This is a cedar sample of a higher grade. This is a cypress, so you can smell the cypress.
That smells so nice. Yeah. You should just keep one of those.
So if your clients are interested in like cypress baths or walls or ceilings, please don't hesitate to reach out. Thank you.